1. Ohio drug bust. When Ohio police pulled over a BMW on Christmas Eve in 2012, they saw the boot was packed with Christmas presents, which the driver of the car was supposedly dropping off to a nearby family. However, the beautifully wrapped gifts didn't contain toys but almost 13 kilograms of marijuana, worth around $305,500. 2. Oxley family tragedy. On Christmas Day 1893, Adelaide businessman Henry Oxley and his family were found dead. The walls were covered in blood. Oxley was laying on his bed with a razor in his hand, and his wife and children had horrific head wounds. Carolers were initially suspected of the crime, but police eventually determined that Oxley murdered his family before his own life due to being in debt. 3. Santa suit slayings. On Christmas Eve in 2008, Bruce Pardo put on a Santa suit and drove to his in-laws' house, where he killed 9 family members, including his ex-wife. He then sprayed 18 liters of gasoline into the house and set it alight and left a booby-trapped car outside his divorce lawyer's house before taking his own life. 4. Sodder children disappearance. On Christmas Eve in 1945, 5 children from the Sodder family in West Virginia disappeared and were never seen again. Their father George claimed they were kidnapped by the Sicilian mafia as retaliation for his outspoken views. The family erected a billboard near their home offering a reward for information, which remained in place until the children's mother's death in 1989. 5. Donkey mishap. A nativity donkey in Andalusia, Spain was fatally injured after a 146 kilograms man climbed on its back to pose for photos. The man faced court, but the case was thrown out by the judge. 6. Chimney break-in. In 2010, Seattle-based Sean Chanel, 24, tried to convince police he was Santa after attempting to break into a house via a chimney. The only problem? He was naked and got stuck. When he was finally released by emergency workers, he was arrested and then sent to prison. 7. Christmas murder spree. Between the 24th and the 26th of December 1992, 6 people were killed in one of Ohio's worst ever mass murders. The killers, who ranged in age from 16 to 20, shot victims over 3 days on their spree. Police caught them and one received the death penalty. 8. Horror under the Christmas tree. In 2011, Michelle O'Dowd, 67, offered her friend Patty White, 41, a place to stay in her Florida home over the Christmas holidays. But when Michelle failed to turn up to work for her shift, her brother discovered her dead body under the Christmas tree, buried under a pile of gifts. White was sentenced to 45 years in jail for the killing. 9. First Christmas in Australia. In 1788, the makeshift colony of convicts and Marines experienced their first Christmas in Australia. When convict Michael Dennison stole a pound of flour, he was sentenced to 200 lashes of the whip. But the Christmas spirit prevailed, only 150 lashes were delivered instead. 1. A grim gift left under the Christmas tree. When 37-year-old Patty White offered down on her luck Michelle O'Dowd a place to stay over the festive period, Michelle was delighted at the Christmas spirit being shown to her. But White had an ulterior motive. One involving stealing all of her new housemates' credit cards, killing her and leaving her among a trashed Christmas tree to look like a bungled burglary. The scene was discovered by Michelle's twin brother Phil, who went to check in on her after she failed to show for work. There, amongst a pile of wrapped Christmas presents, he saw his sister's foot. Patty White had beaten and strangled the 67-year-old and left her among the gifts. She would receive a 45-year sentence from a South Carolina judge for her vile crime. 2. Couple stab man in face, bash in his skull and set light to him on Christmas Day in Kill Bill plot. Victoria, Australia. It's Christmas Day 2013. But instead of spending the day with his loved ones, William Bill Stevenson pays the ultimate price for keeping poor company as his friends, meth addicts Danielle Kerr and Darren Lewis, kill him in one of the most violent ways conceivable. Their motives not entirely clear. The pair drove Stevenson out to bushland and began beating him about the head with a large rock. Kerr then stabbed the man to death while cackling about their Kill Bill plans. The couple then set the car alight and casually walked home. Thankfully, they would both be arrested, charged, and convicted soon afterwards. 3. Marvelous teen gang indulge in sickening festive killing spree. There were 4 of them and they called themselves the Downtown Posse. To the police and courts, though, they were simply Laura Taylor, 16 years old, DeMarcus Smith, 17, Heather Matthews, 20, and Marvelous Keene, 19. Between Christmas Eve and Boxing Day 1992, the gang went on a murder spree in Dayton, Ohio that would see 5 innocent people die and 4 seriously injured. Murdered for not liking a gift enough. Led by Keene, the gang's primary motive was robbery, but things soon got out of hand as Marvelous Keene grew paranoid about snitches and effectively turned the holiday season into hunting season. For his central role in the Christmas killings, Keene would go on to become the 10,000th American convict to be executed since the death penalty was reinstated back in 1976, while his cohorts would receive life sentences. 4. Search for missing Bristol woman turns to hunt for her killer. Joanna Yates' disappearance a week before Christmas in 2010 made local news in Bristol almost immediately. Soon, the search and appeal broadened and her whereabouts were of national interest. On Christmas Day, her body was found in the snow, 3 miles from her home. The case achieved notoriety for the media's handling of the first suspect, Joanna's eccentric landlord, Christopher Jeffries. Hounded and effectively labeled the murderer without proof, UK tabloids The Mirror and The Sun were later found guilty of contempt of court for their poor coverage. Jeffries was later vindicated when Ms. Yates' Dutch neighbor Vincent Tabak was arrested and charged with her murder. 5. The infamous child beauty queen murder that still haunts America more than 2 decades on. JonBenet Ramsey's Christmas Day/Boxing Day 1996 murder, police could never officially ascertain the precise date, caused an enormous storm across America and the wider world. 22 years on, and the 6-year-old's callous killer or killers have still not been identified. True crime buffs the world over have studied and obsessed over the case of the young girl killed apparently during a botched kidnapping. Countless documentaries, movies, books, and articles point fingers, but the mystery's never been solved. Many people accuse JonBenet's parents. Some look to her older brother. Accusations of a stalker are rife and local child molesters have somewhat understandably been treated with suspicion. In fact, few people in Boulder, Colorado have evaded suspicion. Perhaps the eeriest suspect though is Bill McReynolds, a local man hired by the Ramseys to play Santa Claus at a large party held at the rich family's house that year. McReynolds died in 2002, swearing innocence. It's a case that will, perhaps, never be solved. 6. Edinburgh woman stabs neighbor 29 times over Christmas present dispute. Murdered for not liking a gift enough. Well, that was the excuse that 37-year-old Melissa Young gave police when she was arrested for the brutal killing of her next-door neighbor Alan Williamson on Christmas Day 2013. Young later claimed diminished responsibility and that mental health issues were behind the sustained attack. At the time, though, her motive was given as rage due to Williamson dismissively rejecting her Christmas present of a pair of unisex trainers and a copy of the Sun newspaper's slightly raunchy 2014 calendar. Young pleaded guilty to culpable homicide in 2014 and was sentenced to a minimum 20-year sentence. Since being jailed at the women's prison HMP Cornton Vale in Stirling, she has seriously assaulted 2 female prison officers. 7. A Christmas rampage. December 28, 1987. Ronald Gene Simmons walked into a law firm in Russellville, Arkansas and shot dead a receptionist who he was infatuated with, but who had spurned his advances. Then he went into the office of an oil company and shot 2 executives, killing one and injuring the other. He then drove to a convenience store and former place of work and shot 2 more people, who would both survive. Finally, he would do the same at the Woodline Motor Freight Company, shooting and wounding a woman. He then sat down and waited for police to arrest him. The spree killing rocked the state. But the murders were merely a bookend to Simmons' evil festive period. 6 days previously he had shot and strangled his wife, 2 sons and 4 daughters. It doesn't end there either. Simmons then sat in the house, among the bodies, for 4 days, leaving only to visit a local bar. On Boxing Day, 9 more relatives turned up to visit the Simmons family, including Ronald Simmons' grandchildren. All were killed. In total, he took 16 people's lives that Christmas. On the 25th of June, 1990, then Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton signed Simmons' execution warrant and he was killed by lethal injection. 8. 'Twas the night before Christmas and fire tore through the house. The Sodders dedicated their lives to trying to find out what happened that Christmas, but died in later life without finding out. 9. The first and last family photograph the Lawsons would ever have taken. North Carolina tobacco farmer Charles Davis Lawson made his wife Fanny and their 7 children put on their Sunday best for Christmas Day morning, 1929. For they were to go into town and have a professional family photograph taken, a rare treat for such a poor family. Later that day, after settling back home, Charles would set about methodically beating and shooting his wife along with 6 of the 7 children until they were dead. The child spared? The Lawsons' eldest, 16-year-old Arthur, who Charles had sent on a needless errand before his vicious massacre. Charles Lawson's motive was never determined. 10. A murder so sick and twisted it would disgust even Halloween. Christy Bamu was just 15 when he was tortured and drowned in a bath by his own sister Magali and her twisted boyfriend Eric Bakubi. It was Christmas Day 2010 when the couple finally killed poor Christy, after a sustained and brutal 4-day torture session at their flat in Newham, London. When his body was found, more than 130 separate injuries were counted. The 20-something Congolese couple's excuse? They believed Magali's younger brother was a witch. Eric was ordered to serve at least 30 years in prison, while Magali received a minimum of 25 years for the unimaginably horrific killing. 11. Stagger Lee and the Seasonal Showdown. Lee Shelton was a known criminal and pimp who went by the nickname Stagger Lee. Famous now because of the folk song he would inspire, Shelton wasn't a man to be trifled with. As William Billy Lyons would discover to his cost. This murder took place on Christmas night 1895, in St. Louis, Missouri. Stagger and Billy were drinking and playing cards together in the Bill Curtis Saloon when, wouldn't you know it, they got into a dispute. Lyons snatched Stagger's Stetson hat and, well, you've seen westerns. Stagger Lee drew his gun, shot Lyons dead, and the rest is history. History and song. 12. The Santa Suit Slaughter. It was Christmas Eve of 2004 in the small city of Covina, just outside of LA. Parties dominated the neighborhood. 1129, East Knollcrest Drive had around 25 close friends and family enjoying each other's company. At around 11:30 p.m., a knock at the door came. Standing on the other side of the door? Santa Claus. At least that's what the 8-year-old girl who answered the door thought. But it wasn't Saint Nick, it was a man called Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, the unstable and violent ex-husband of one of the women at the party. He was holding a 9mm pistol in one hand and a flamethrower in the other. He had a further 3 handguns in his possession. Cruelly and methodically he went about shooting everyone in his sight, before setting alight to the house. 9 people would die and 3 would be badly injured. Pardo left, driving to his brother's house some 30 miles away. He had planned to detonate a series of handmade explosives and then make his escape to Canada, but the fire had caused his Santa suit to melt onto him, causing severe 3rd-degree burns. Instead, Pardo decided to put a bullet in his head. "We hope we didn't put you off your mince pies too much. Merry Christmas, everyone."